Okay, folks, it's, how many of you are here for the first time? Not so many? No. Okay. So, folks, you know who I am. I just want to take you a little bit through why we're having a so-called sour beer and what it means. Up to like 150 years ago, there were lots and lots of parts of the world where beers were brewed seasonally. The whole socio-political, socio-economic rhythm to beer was a seasonal one. The fact that we have an Oktoberfest now in Munich is a barrel emptying exercise so that you can start brewing and fermenting safely because your spore loading in the air has dropped because it's now October. So you want the barrels ready in October, that's why you empty them in September. Okay. That still happens in rural and Roman Catholic Bavaria. So there's not a political conservatism, but there's a cultural conservatism driven by the church to a large extent in Bavaria. That same effect happens in rural Belgium. I think this area in the Brabant is a lot of religious conservatism, a lot of cultural conservatism, and one of the things they've done is they've kept sour brewing and sour fermenting beers. They've actually stylized them and they are now celebrated. We understand what's going on in the whole process. They also rely on summer consumption and having your barrels ready for winter brewing. So in this area, in this particular example comes from Hazeldean. It's called a raspberry lambic style. These beers in that area of Brussels, they do a fermentation of a minimum of 30% unmalted wheat, and the rest is a barley malt grist. And they brew when they know that the spore loading is going to be lower, and tends to be now the next week or two when the temperatures in daytime are expected to be 15 degrees and lower, and obviously much cooler at night. They brew and they have large cool ships, and they put the hot brew into a cool ship and let it cool down naturally, and at a certain strike temperature, there's a natural progression of wild ferments that go into the cool ship and start the fermentation process. I think that things that are important is this is a relic of a style that was common all over the place, but they've culturally kept that part going. If you think of that Brussels, and Belgium was in and out of Franco-Prussian wars and the First World War and Second World War. A lot of the equipment and stuff got pillaged by either side, a lot of the metal work. But because some of the slow beer making process, a lot of the good yeast and hochos inside the barrels that were not used and abused, they were able to survive a lot of persecution and a lot of wars. In this particular case, this is a lambic style beer. This is a beer that comes out of the cool ship and goes into wooden barrels. The first wild yeast, or the first wild inoculum, are enteric and cloaca style bacteria. It'll shock most people that work in the water systems to know that that's what starts. E. coli is an allowed infection at the start of a lambic. I think it'll shock most of us. The second attack is by wild yeast, Saccharomyces, which do a very, very rapid fermentation and do a very high attenuation. The third is lactic acid bacteria, which gives you the sourness and further attenuate the beer. And the fourth is naturally occurring Brettanomyces. When the beer's in the barrels, not only are they getting hochos coming from the barrel and color from the barrel, the Brettanomyces also does a very strong flavor effect, and it also forms like a floor crust on the beer. In the caves where the barrels were sometimes stored, or in the attics or the cold rooms where they were stored, there would have been a hanging ham with a mold on it. There would have been cheese with mold on it. Some of those bacteria and ferments were shared with what was going on in the beer. So this was a natural medicine of the time. It was brewed seasonally. The kinds of ferments surviving this and was in the beer would have been prebiotic and probiotic for your own wellness and sense of well-being. If you have half a liter of this in half an hour, especially if you know it's medicine, because it's quite tough to glug this. You will defeat the hydrochloric acid in your stomach, and some of this will get in whole into your intestines, which further inoculates you and makes the digestibility of the food that's also undergoing the same storage conditions, makes them far more digestible. So nobody could have a feast on Christmas Day and have half a pound of ham and half a pound of cheese. It's very expensive stuff. These were overwintering survival foods supplemented by survival medicine. Okay. If you have a look at this one, so the way the lambic beers are served today, you can have an entire lambic, which is super sour, basically the sourness and the lack of complexity of something like a Berliner Weisse. Or you can have other ways of serving it. You can introduce some ferment sugar in via blending 40% old lambic with a 60% inoculum of fresh lambic where there's still sugar into a bottle, and you make a champagne style closure and you serve it once that secondary fermentation is completed, and you have a much fresher tasting lambic. That will be then called a Gurze. You can also introduce, just like in Berliner Weisse, they sometimes put woodruff syrup or raspberry syrup to make it digestible and drinkable at a serving. You can also mix sugar directly into a lambic and serve it as a faro. There's a bit of sweetness in it. Another way of getting the sugar in is via the two fruits that they normally allow, which is kriek, which is Flemish dialect for a sour cherry, or in this case framboos, which is raspberry. So not only are you putting the color and the flavor in, but you're introducing the sugar. You then bottle that up, and then you will serve and get the bubble back in the... Remember, if in an open barrel for 6 months, that beer is going to have almost no... protected by the floor, but almost no bubble left. Now, if you have a look at this one, I've just read on the bottle, it was pointed out before, there is no wheat in this. This just says lambic style. So Hazeldean have attempted to make a sour style, but they haven't gone through all the steps. They would have to do them in Belgium, otherwise they would not be able to call it that, but they've said lambic style, and that's fair. So they haven't used wheat, so some of the cloudiness would maybe be some of the wood contact and some of the pectins and other bits and pieces from the fruit, possibly. I'm not exactly sure. On the look, smell, taste aside, I think some of the pink there would be from the raspberry. If you smell this, a lot of guys are saying maybe it's acetic. It's almost there, but I'm not sure that it's actually acetic. To me, it's a blend of Brett and raspberry. And that, if you had to like intellectualize a beer food pairing and say, I'm going to mix Brett and raspberry, you say, it's not even a thing. It's like broccoli and guava milkshake. You wouldn't do it, kind of thing. But in this case, I think that's what we're picking up. Some of the raspberry fruitiness is definitely there, and you can. So lactic is not so powerful on the nose as it is on the taste, but you can almost pick up a little bit of that lactic. We say milk seed in Afrikaans. Yeah. Now, for those who are not used to this, let's have a little sippy to clear your palate, because it's going to be a shock for those who don't normally do it. Question time. Yeah.
Is the bread that's like oliviness, almost, or caperness, is that what you would describe as the bread, or what is that? Is that the wrong?
That might be. I will give over to the other two Stellenbosch guys. They got that. I don't pick it up that way. I pick up almost like that sort of wet dog, wet saddle, sweaty saddle kind of thing, and almost like there's a little bit of a. It's almost like a butterscotchy kind of a salty butterscotch kind of a. Yeah. Okay, so those who want to have a bigger sip, who found that first sip quite shocking? It's quite sour, but now that you intellectually know that it needs to be there, I think have a bigger sip of this. Bone dry. The interesting thing about bone dry is a mouthfeel, but the raspberry gives it as if there's sweetness. So now you got this seesaw interplay with a pure mouthfeel with an implied sweetness, which I find quite intriguing. I find personally that raspberry for me is not, I would have preferred cherry. But for the same reason that I don't personally like the raspberry so much, somebody would say I love it for the exact same reason. When I know about the medicinal qualities of this, And I know that this is made by Hazeldean, which have a very strong reputation, have made some excellent sours. I think they pulled this off very, very well. We had Pete here just now from the States, who's an international taster on this, and he said he's very, very impressed. Folks, I think that's important here. They deliberately use, I'm not sure in this case, but in Brussels, they will use 2, 3, 4-year-old hops. The bacteriostatic qualities are still there, but your alpha acids are very, very down. And that also allows for that sequential 4 different ferments to work in sequence to our advantage. Those hops are cheap. They often throwaway hops. So it's a way of utilizing them, which is great. And with 3 or 4 or 5 years in barrel, that cheesiness actually dissipates. So you don't have that. So it's a way of utilizing stuff. And obviously, you don't now say, oh, I've got old hops, let's make a sour. But in that area, Cantillon is one of the breweries, Bellevue is one of the breweries, Frank Boon's brewery. Cantillon is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So in Brussels, this style is not just a relic, it is celebrated. I think with the advent of the European Parliament, one of my buddies was telling me that I have to do a lot of beer politics work there. The ladies and gents that are dressed all black and smart will have trays in a champagne-style bottle of these kind of beers to show off to the international delegates, because that's their champagne. It's there, which is fantastic. If I think of food with this product, imagine a salad with some crunchy bits, with some parsley, with some tiny bits of salty caper. Salty will go with this nicely. Tiny bits of salty salmon, little bit of red onion, little bits of radish, little bits and pieces. I think you could have a little pig salad with this. And cheeses, can you imagine? And I did say cheeses would go great with this. Imagine soft cheese with this. Even rock hard cheese, I think will be great. So the beauty here is this is a celebration of an old style. It is protected. The appellation controller says Lambic is this. It's made this way in this area. It's a UNESCO site, so it's celebrated. It's a way of us to keep in mind. Imagine your kids. If you didn't tell them about beer, they would say, this is rotten beer, this is off beer, you made a mistake. Castle Lagers, you made a big mistake. But this is how beer was. Up until 150 years ago, if Castle Lager was made then, there would have been bits of this in Castle because we didn't have all the mechanisms to protect the beers. So when the refrigeration machine came in the 1860s and we could create 1,000 winters, we didn't need to do things this way. And we started making beers that did not celebrate these wonderful flavors. And we started making beers where we celebrated hop. We celebrated the lack of sourness. We celebrated refrigeration to keep it safe. We celebrated acid washing of yeast and all other kinds, stainless steel. So beers have gone another way, but we've kept the steam engine going. The guys that do it well do great. Just quickly, I was in European Beer Star last year. We had one beer in the 40s and a couple in the high 30s in the sour style. That same year, with 3 of the same tasters from European Beer Star, we had 3 student beers in the 40s, and we had a half an hour fight to work out which was the best. And that was, we opened the style and said, do this kind of thing, not with the same chojos, but trying to emulate it and use a wild and characterized wild yeast that's from Africa. And we had some crazy examples. So there is a revival. The craft guys are reviving this intellectually so that we can keep doing it. But the real deal have been bolstered. They're now still in business and they make the crazy examples. Yeah.
Why is the aftertaste like salty?
Gosh, you're not the first one. So the question was, why is the aftertaste salty? I also picked that up. I'm not sure, but I think these guys could literally add salt if they wanted. There are 1 or 2 beer styles. They've resurrected this Polish Grodzki beer where they use salt water. Close to the salt mines, they use that water. And I know some of the lactics and that love that kind of environment. So, yeah, I mean, when they make sauerkraut, they also use the ferment in a brine solution.
I made sauerkraut last week.
Sauerkraut's fantastic, yeah. That's probably why I picked out salty bits for the salad, because I feel that it's going to go well. So let me just tell you what I know. I've asked every group who loves it and who hates it. And the reason why is you either love this idea or you can't like it. It's because it doesn't It's not like a political coalition. You either vote or you run away and you live in the hills. I particularly like the style. I just prefer the crick version if it's the fruity one. So who likes it and will try this again? Yeah, you're a much more intellectual. Some of the guys say, I will never have it. But I love it. You take sides and it's great. And the message there is brewing companies need to be brave and make beers that delight some of you, and maybe you don't like it, but for the same reason. But we'll make you something that you do like. If you make like a kind of a lager beer that offends nobody, you delight nobody. And because you don't delight anybody, you have to compete on price. If you make a spectrum of love, hate, love, hate, love, hate, you don't make the hates and you trade price. Margin on the likes. You make far more money and far more responsibly. You can then judge consumer opinion by your sales and your feedback. Consumer wins, the traders win, the brewer wins, we all win. And that's great. This will be, if a brewery makes this, they tend to not also make a lager and make an ale. This will be, because of the kind of equipment and the style and the use of barrels, you tend to concentrate on this kind of a style. Whereas a lager brewery could make different lagers, or an ale brewery could make different ales simultaneously. Folks, are there any questions?
These berries also contribute in terms of the lactiness or the microorganisms that are there, or the
You mean the raspberry?
Yeah.
It might. I know the flaw on the skin of the cherry would have a lot of chojos on there and microbes that will help. I'm not sure what they've done with this raspberry. But if you look at a raspberry, there's plenty of stuff on the outside skin of a raspberry. It might well be able to contribute. But by that stage, almost all the sugar has already been, has undergone those 4 different ferments. So those things might combine just to ferment the rest of the sugar that's inside the raspberry. I don't think it'll affect the beer so much.
I wonder what kind of barley they've used, because there's a sample of Nkombot, if you know.
Yeah, but I think that's the left. So you mean it's not? So you're thinking there might be even some sorghum there?
Yeah, the sugar.
You reckon there's sorghum in there? I don't know, but there's definitely. But on the bottle it says barley, but with these chojos that they're using to make the beer, you can create the impression that you've used sorghum, because it's going to have some of
The
those.
microbes are giving that impression.
Well, I think so. Yeah, there are definitely. There's lactic and all kinds. Red.
But there's this built-in of Nkombot, but it becomes even punchy.
But that's delicious.
It's vinegar.
So everybody said that, but I think it's a combination of the lactic and the raspberry together, and the bread.
But now when I just put the tongue and let it, hit my top part, I don't feel that vinegar. It's sour, but it's sharp.
I think it's the impression of vinegar, but it's 3 or 4 things that are giving it. Anybody else? Yeah. There's a lot of lactic acid in it, very much. You either like it or you don't. Yeah. You as well. Is it? I don't know what the alcohol is, but the flavors are strong. Very much. There's going to be some more of this lying around, so I think some of it's going into the fridge. You will benefit if you have a whole bottle. You get a sense of well-being. There are more nerves in your intestines than in your brain.
I just told him, I believe in your gut microbiome influences your mental health.
Totally, it's got to. Not only is it direct nerve, it's also via the endocrine system and all those little
Hormone
chemicals that are, exactly. You were one of the lovers. Hammer, you too.
Love it.
That's a pop group. You 3 is a failed pop group. You 4. I think it's fantastic. What do you think? What do you guys and ladies think?
I think I'm a bit confused because when I smell it and when I taste it, it kind of confuses the hell out of me.
That's what I said. Take it small, because you're almost not getting it completely. You could almost say this is a lovely fruity beer. Oh no, it's not. It's quite so I think it's an acquired flavor, but people that live in that area, they're waiting for this. This is their sort of celebration kind
I
of thing.
think for me, it's more like, because I'm used to, I don't know if you know of Nkombot.
I do, yes.
Yes, so when I smelled it, I smelled Nkombot.
Those guys from Limpopo said the exact same, saying exactly the same thing. Yeah.
I smelled Nkombot, but when I taste it, it's like, ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a shock now because
Yeah.
it's not what I expected.
Yeah.
But I think it's not bad.
Yeah.
At the same time, I can't say.
But it's an acquired taste. You're either going to like it or you're not. Yeah. What do you guys think? Too much? Okay.
Like she said, it reminds her of that.
Yeah.
And I had it 4 days ago. I tasted that
Yeah.
for the first time. And it's the same.
Now you take sides with
The
this.
texture, but I don't that aftertaste.
Yeah.
Just sits there.
Yeah.
That sourness.
Yeah. It's interesting, no? So you're one of the exceptions that say it's okay. Mostly I love it or I don't like it. I love it. I love the execution. It's different enough to say that it's Hazeldean, but it's similar enough to see their attention to detail and what they're trying to do. It's not easy. It's not an easy situation.
It doesn't give you that bitterness of a normal beer that will give you.
I think that, so they've used hops, unlike the old hops I spoke about in Belgium. They didn't use those hops because we don't have that normally. They probably use a little bit less of a hop that has a normal bitterness, or a hop that has like a low alpha hop, I would suggest, because you don't want to have bitter on top of this. Yeah. Can you pick up the saltiness? One or two people said there's a bit of a saltiness. Interesting, very interesting. Yeah. I'm not sure how they get that. So I don't know if it's actual salt or the impression of salt. It could be both, or it could be one or the other. Yeah.
Do they sell it here?
How big yours?
Do they sell it here? Like in bars and stuff. I've never seen it.
No, so you'd get this at the craft festivals, in those specialist craft shops, and I think Ultra Liquors or something might in their craft section have some of this. And you won't have this all over the country. This is from Pretoria, so it'll be a Capital Craft. Those kind of guys will probably have it. Yeah. I don't mainline on craft. I go to.
No, I'm just going to say USAB.
No, but I love. I'm an international taster, so we do lots of the stuff. But I don't see this a lot. But I know the people. I've met them a few times. Yeah. You see, you're making that tart. When you do that, I think of giving you food, because that's the same impression you do when you want to taste and love something. That's why this will go great with food. Or there'll be bad combination, but you'll be able to academically show how beer and food go or don't go with something like this. How many people pick up the impression of salt? A little bit. It's almost a seawater salt, not a freshwater table salt. It's almost like a mixed salt.
It's not just the sodium chloride, it's got different.
Yeah.
But I think it's when you have a pickle or something like that, there's saltiness in there, but there's that sourness. I don't think the sourness, because it's the same sort of sourness. We just perceive it almost as a placebo.
Yeah, can be.
That's what's happening.
But maybe also because they're on the farm, it might be some of
They have a lactic
the warhol that might be high in minerals.
Could be.
Yeah, just speculating.
It's quite intriguing.
That makes sense now.
Anton,
If you have a lot of it, it gets nicer.
it does. That's the beauty of this. You have to have like a bottle.
And that's the medicine. That's the medicine element.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the prebiotic and probiotic of this?
Yeah.
To move from the summer condition. So, Oktoberfest. Who has half a liter at an Oktoberfest? When it started in 1810, we used to, okay, it's good. Okay, folks, over and out. Hammerhead.